Hello and welcome back to coverage here at Grand Prix Richmond. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Reed Duke, and we are ready for the finals. Andrew Cuneo on the left-hand side of your screen. He sleeved up blue-white miracles for this tournament. On the other side of the table is Lucien Langlais, and he is on Lance. And look at this explosive start here with 2 copies of Mox Diamond to kick things off. And look at that, he's going to get both lands back right away with Light from the Loam, Reed.
Yeah,
boom.
This is really the power of lands, particularly in Game 1. You don't have to fear a graveyard hate card, so Life from the Loam, there's just nothing the Miracles player can really do to stop it. You can Force of Will it one time, but that's a high cost, and it's just coming back the next turn. So Andrew Cuneo is now in a position where he's going to have to fight through this the hard way. Exploration plus Life from the Loam already assembled.
Yeah, Turbo Lands is in effect now, and Andrew Cuneo knows what type of things he's looking for. He looked at the cards with Ponder and was like, nope. Now, as far as actual action goes on the table there for Lucien, he's clearly been able to advance his game plan pretty far, but he doesn't have anything going on as far as denying Andrew mana or making a 20-20. Well, I guess he's halfway there, but he doesn't have at least both pieces of that yet.
Correct. However, having Life from the Loam in the graveyard, this effectively allows him to draw 3 cards if you figure that he's mostly interested in lands anyway.
He just dredged the Dark Depths too, Reed.
Wow, yeah, so this could be a quick one if Andrew's not prepared with the right answers. But seeing 3 cards deeper into the library every single turn and picking up all of those lands, getting to play them 2 at a time, we're going to see it's a super powerful engine, and already Lucien is threatening lethal with a 20/20 creature.
Almost lethal.
That's true, almost lethal.
It's a 2-turn clock somehow. The good news for Andrew is that he plays a lot of basic lands in his deck, so Wasteland itself isn't particularly great against him. If he's able to get a Plains on the battlefield and have a Swords to Plowshares, he may be able to hold off Lucien even using his Dark Depths at least right away. But if he doesn't have it, I mean, Lucien's going for it, and it's just going to be Game 1. That was another shuffle off of a Ponder here, Reed. This is starting to look really sketchy for Andrew very quickly.
Well, as the knot tightens, as the lands player's position gets better, Andrew is going to be more and more selective in what cards he's looking to find. I think with his first Ponder, he was probably thinking, let me find Counterbalance so I can stop the Life from the Loam. Now, that's not even good enough, because if he taps 2 mana for Counterbalance, he's just going to be hit with a 20/20 creature. So the tightrope that Andrew needs to walk, it's getting longer and it's getting thinner, and he can't make a wrong move.
Now, I think he does have some pretty decent answers here, though. He has Terminus in his hand, which we've seen him be able to set that up as a miracle, and that would get rid of Merit Lage, which is now on the battlefield, by the way. He also has in his hand, I guess it's over. I guess if he couldn't crack that fetch land, it meant that he couldn't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have him at 21 life, right?
It's true that he was not dead to that attack, but
okay.
I mean, he's got to answer the 20/20. He's got to stop the Life from the Loam engine. He can't crack any fetch lands. Can't cast a Force of Will. There's no way.
Okay, fair enough. So he's going to scoop him up, and we got Game 1. It's a shame from Andrew's perspective that it went so quickly there, because I saw in his hand he had Council's Judgment.
Mm-hmm.
He was ready to go.
One of the tricky things about the Merit Lage combo, the Dark Depths Thespian Stage combination, is that it can be activated at the end of the opponent's turn. So that means sorcery speed answers like Council's Judgment and Jace the Mind Sculptor and often Terminus, they're just not good enough. So I did say that the dynamic would change after sideboarding. Let's hope, at least for Andrew Cuneo's sake, that it does change, because that was fairly one-sided. But Andrew's going to be bringing in additional counterspells, and importantly, those 2 copies of Surgical Extraction, which that can hit Life from the Loam, it can hit Punishing Fire, it can take away a key piece of the combo. But basically, being able to interact and stop that Life from the Loam engine changes the dynamic of the matchup quite a lot. On the other hand, Lucien's going to make some big overhauls. We talked about Back to Basics, which it didn't even have time to come up in Game 1, but that is a very, very scary card if you're playing land. So those 3 Croson Grips right in. They can answer Counterbalance as well. Those are super effective cards. 2 copies of Choke That's his answer to back to basics. Now both players have a 3-mana spell that will sort of KO the opponent in a close game. And then the Tireless Tracker is going to keep Andrew honest, make sure that he is well prepared with lots of Swords to Plowshares and maybe even some additional removal spells beyond that.
We did see Lucian bring in Molten Vortex. Was it against you?
Yeah, he had it against me when I played against him early on today.
So that gives him an alternate win condition. What does he bring that in? Like, in what point would he want to bring that in? Is it good against Andrew? What's the upside to the Vortex?
Well, sometimes these games just go so long that it can be tough to actually win the game. If your opponent's prepared with answers for the Dark Depths combo, maybe they Surgical Extraction, you're Punishing Fire, you just want to diversify, and you want to make sure that if you can get ahead on cards, you have something. You're not stuck. Another thing Molten Vortex can do is it manages Planeswalkers, with Jace the Mind Sculptor being one of Andrew's most common ways to gain an advantage and sometimes win the game via the ultimate. So any repeatable source of annoying damage can be great against Planeswalkers.
Would you be surprised to see it brought in by Lucian here?
No, I think he probably will bring it in. I don't think it's one of his best cards, but I think it's worth having.
Boy, that was a nice start for him, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Mox Diamond, get back both my lands. Play a land, play Exploration, play a land, go. It's turn 1. We might need to take this out of the fair game camp and fair deck camp, I should say, and put it into the unfair.
Yeah, I mean,
he's going to keep drawing like that.
He could have beat Storm combo with that hand just by making it 2020 fast enough.
Yeah, Lucian, by the way, he is going to lock up silver here. He's actually had quite a nice run this year. And, well, you're going to be seeing him out at the PT read, and he's been playing really well.
Somewhat of a frightening prospect.
Yeah.
I said it when we were lining up the quarterfinals, but I played against Lucian, and he impressed me. I think he's just a tight, good player. He's got good table demeanor, seems to understand his niche deck strategy very, very well.
Did you know this is his backup legacy deck?
No, you gotta be kidding.
No, so he had apparently a fully foiled out Infect deck that he used. That was his primary. But apparently the loss of Gitaxian Probe caused him to put that one on the back burner for now. And he decided to go to his backup lands deck, which is not short on foils either, I might add. I think that Lucian has a pretty nice collection. Yeah, he comes from just outside of Atlanta, Georgia.
He's got to be happy with his deck choice and the way it's served him so far.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, him and his girlfriend came down to battle, and she's actually been watching him in the whole top 8, rooting him on. He's turned it into quite a nice little weekend trip here. Especially if he can finish off the resilient Andrew Cuneo and take home this trophy. We'll see if he can do that, or if it's going to be Cuneo post-board winning 2 games in a row to take home the $10,000 and the trophy for himself. Thank you very much. Flooded Strand go for Cuneo. Let's see if Longley has one of those explosive starts like we saw back in game number 1. No, it's Forest go. Wow.
Much different.
Andrew Cuneo says, okay, I can work with this. I have a land in play. That's all you have?
There is some element, Marshall, of I was talking about all those sweet sideboard cards that Lucian has access to that he's going to be bringing in for the long games. But just like with any combo deck or linear strategy, when you sideboard a lot of cards, it does dilute your main game plan. So it's going to be harder for him to have those sort of all-in starts. He might even be doing things like trimming Mox Diamond or, cutting his mana bond, stuff like that. So his opening hands are going to be a little weaker, but the reward that he will reap for paying that price is that he'll have more tools in the long game.
Check this out. Here's Mox Diamond.
Cool play there, discarding Riftstone Portal, which is a land that has an ability from the graveyard. Lets all of your lands tap for green or white mana. That looks to be choke.
Yeah, I think that's choke.
And Andrew just right away moves the island over, and this is going to be tough for him. I do see that he has Council's Judgment, in his hand, which that can be a long-run plan, but this is certainly a headache.
Definitely. I mean, Andrew's actually quite heavy on basic islands in his deck, and his dual lands are, I think they're all islands, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this could be a real problem.
Yeah, so the two things he can do is find a third land and just play a one-shot Council's Judgment, get rid of it. The other thing he can do is try to accelerate the search for Azcanta transforming, because that would be a source of blue mana that's not an island.
Right.
But remember, we're playing against a Wasteland deck.
You don't say. So Lucian really forcing the issue here. Casting a Wasteland, or excuse me, playing a Wasteland. And here we go. Disenchant to take care of the choke. Though Andrew's still going to lose his Tundra in the process. That wasn't going to change either way. And now he gets to get his island back. Here's Exploration now for Lucian. What else does he have?
So Andrew probably lets this resolve, and because we're already at the stage of the game where Exploration has lost a little bit of its potency. So if Andrew can fight over Life from Loam instead, then he can maybe turn this into a card that he can ignore.
Yeah, that anemic start, Forest Go from Lucian has really changed shape here, thanks to Mox Diamond, and now he's got Dark Depths on the battlefield as well, which is always very threatening. Cuneo, though, he's doing his thing. He's got Search for Azcanta going, kind of massaging that draw step. He's hitting his land drops. He played a Marsh Flats for the turn. Oh boy, there's another Wasteland, though. No clean target for it at the moment.
But we're in a little bit of a holding pattern. Lucian doesn't have any of his engines going, so he's doing a great job disrupting Andrew's mana, but I mean, not much besides that. He can start actually tapping 3 mana to remove counters from Dark Depths, but that's a slow way to do it.
But Cuneo looked at the board and said, oh, if you're going to say go, I'm not going to do anything. That's fine. He resolved his trigger there for Search for Azcanta, but that is a Rishadan port there from Lucian, so he tapped down one of the islands, but Cuneo played another one, so he has still been able to hit his mana. He also has a Jace the Mind Sculptor in his hand, though only 3 mana available, again, thanks to the Rishadan port. Passes the turn back to Lucian.
And you can tell that Lucian is saving the Wasteland for Azcanta the Sunken Ruin. He knows that if the game continues at this drawn-out pace and Andrew's able to start activating that, it's going to be over. So he needs to be prepared.
Read that as Life from the Loam on the stack.
Yeah, this is exactly what Longley wanted. And Cuneo is going to have to probably find a Graveyard Hate card in pretty short order, or else he's just going to get buried in card advantage.
It resolves. He did have a Force of Will, but as you mentioned earlier, that is just not a fight worth fighting. You're not going to win the long game against a Dredge card by countering it. And right now, with no pressure from Andrew Cuneo's side, he just has to say okay. And this is huge for Lucian because, wow, now he plays 2 Wastelands as well. The good news for Cuneo is he doesn't need to expose his lands to them, but he's going to crack this Marsh Flats.
And the last card in the lands player's hand is Sheltered Thicket, which there's 2 things that are nice about that. The first is in combination with Life from Loam, it provides a draw engine, so you can have your cake and eat it too, in the sense that you dredge Loam every turn, but also by returning the cycling land, you can get your draw step and get a little deeper towards effective cards like Tireless Tracker or Crossing Grip. But the other thing is that keeping the cycling land in hand protects the Life from the Loam from Surgical Extraction, because anytime Andrew puts Surgical Extraction onto the stack targeting Loam, Lucian could cycle and dredge the Loam, pick it right up out of the graveyard, and fizzle the spell. Here, Andrew with Jace the Mind Sculptor. This is just what he needs. Now, both players have their card advantage engine, and the game continues on relatively even footing. It's going to depend what each one of them can find in the next couple of turns. Lucian looking for Punishing Fire, maybe another Choke, and Cuneo looking for Graveyard Hate and Back to Basics.
So shields fully down here for Cuneo as far as mana goes as he passes the turn back. He does have his old friend Jace the Mind Sculptor at the ready, but here's Dredge 3 from Life from the Loam. And it looks like he hit another copy of Dark Depths in there. That was the only land, I believe.
Nothing too devastating, though.
Right.
So Lucian is being very careful, very cagey with the Sheltered Thicket. He didn't tap his mana at all at the end of the last turn. But I wonder at what point he has to take some chances, because a holding pattern against Jace the Mind Sculptor, we haven't seen it work for too many players over the course of the weekend. He might need to force some action. I'm not sure exactly what he'll do.
He's going to keep using Rishadan Port to keep that island tapped down for Cuneo, but Cuneo has 2 other islands and 2 other planes to work with, and as you mentioned, every turn that goes by, it gets worse and worse for Lucian thanks to Jace the Mind Sculptor. Now, Lucian does have these kind of boom, I gotcha type cards that he can get him make a Merit Lage or something along those lines, but the chance that that actually works has to be reducing every turn now.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. The best card he can find is Punishing Fire, which that can get dumped straight into the graveyard by the Life from the Loam Dredge. But I think this is a case of, yes, in a perfect world, you play around the Surgical Extraction, you hang on to that Sheltered Thicket and that 2 mana for dear life, but this might be proving to be a game where you don't have the luxury of playing around a card like that, and you just have to cross your fingers, close your eyes, and hope they don't have it.
Andrew's resolving his Jace Brainstorm still, figuring out exactly how he wants to do this. Choosing, of course, not to transform his search, staring down 3 copies of Wasteland.
Right now, Andrew's focusing on stocking up on resources, making his land drops, finding some Force of Wills, but then again, it's Surgical Extraction and Back to Basics, which are really going to complete the lock or help him actually close out the game and feel safe.
Still Krosan Grip. How do you deal with that?
Well, you can't.
Right? It's just, if he gets it into his hand...
Yeah, it is just a very, very good 1-for-1, but Andrew's seeing so many more cards via the Jace that it's not the end of the world if he plays a card like that and it has to get gripped.
Once again, passes the turn back to Lucian, who is going to activate the Dredge ability here.
He did have a good hit there, a second cycling land in Tranquil Thicket,
which allows him to kind of turbo more Dredge activations. Can't really see the cards in his graveyard now because they're all foil and glimmering. Though that is a Life from the Loam that he's casting, and also one on top of his graveyard.
Yep, and note that this play is made possible by the Riftstone Portal in the graveyard. That's a land that when it's sitting in your yard, it allows all your lands to tap for green mana.
There's that Tranquil Thicket that you mentioned. The engine is well and truly online, and there's a Krosan Grip going into the graveyard here for Lucian. And he's going to cast that other copy of Life from the Loam. Getting back a Grove of the Burn Willows, the Tranquil Thicket. Plays a Grove. And he's going to cycle the Tranquil Thicket once again and keep this Dredge machine rolling right along.
Yeah, you can see that this can be done multiple times in the same turn.
Boy, there's the Thespian stage as well. He's had the Dark Depths for a while, though. If I'm sitting in Lucian's seat, I'm feeling a little nervous about activating the combo there.
Yeah, so nervous is a good way to put it. It's going to make both players nervous. Lucian surely does not want to just go for it into open mana by this point in the game where Andrew's been able to see so many cards.
Right.
However, it does put the squeeze on Andrew a little bit, makes him play a little a little more carefully, because if he taps too low on mana, we could see a flurry of action with Richmond Port tapping his remaining untapped lands, and then Lucian finding a way to slip through the Merit Lage. And we know with that 2020 token, it only takes one hit before it's irreversible.
Yeah, now that you say that, it's actually not even that hard, right? Like, he already has a Rishadan Port to take care of one plains.
Mm-hmm.
If he finds another one, he could just be like, at the end of your main phase, tap down your plane, something like that, and then just activate on end step and then just get you. Andrew only has 3 basic planes in his deck, though he can get white mana at least temporarily with a fetch land, in theory. But in the meantime, it's back to business for Andrew Cuneo. Lucian passes the turn back to him after casting Life from the Loam 3 times that turn. But Andrew gets his draw step, which is augmented by the search for his Kanta, and then he gets to brainstorm every turn with Jace the Mind Sculptor, and he's just got a nice grip going.
And we might even see the game get to a point where Andrew is just taking one-offs to Force of Will, the Life from the Loam, just saying each turn that passes benefits me so much that I'm just gonna stall for one turn. Force of Will your Life from the Loam, try again next time, but in the meantime, I'm getting more Jace Brainstorms. I'm going to spend my mana on cool stuff.
Here's a predict now from Cuneo. He's actually going to get rid of a Swords to Plowshares.
So now if you're Lucian, you're like, okay.
Well,
now I know that you definitely have a backup one.
Yeah.
Or a Snapcaster Mage, for that matter.
Sure. Yeah, Cuneo's hand is well and truly stocked with spells at this point, though it is yet to be shown how relevant those... I mean, he's got a lot of Force of Wills in his hand, for example. And those don't really interact in the best possible way, so even though you'd normally think that the control player would be in an unassailable position by now, I don't think that's actually the case. All right, are we going to see Andrew start to... he's actually going to kill Spell Snare. Now, with no cycling lands, although I do think he actually has one cycling land in hand.
Yeah,
right?
I think he's been holding on to Sheltered Thicket.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Unless I lost track of something somewhere. Yeah, there it is.
There it is, yeah. And, of course, this is going to be a draw, so that means that it can trigger Dredge, and that means that he can get back Life from the Loam and mill for 3. Wow, there's another Krosan Grip. Ooh, and there's Punishing Fire.
So that's going to change the dynamic, because that can threaten the Jace, and it's just an additional graveyard engine that he's going to be able to repeat every turn, and that Cuneo is going to have to answer.
Cuneo's going to respond to, what was it, Life from the Loam going on the stack? Yes, and he's going to counter it again with Spell Snare. This is a pretty critical juncture here in this game. A lot of resources being expended by Andrew.
I think that's a Sphere of Resistance.
Yeah, it is.
I'm not familiar with the art.
Yeah.
But we got to figure it's just a matter of time before Andrew finds a back to basics. 2 of those Krosan Grips in the bin. There's no real special reason to believe that Longley has one in hand. So counterbalance, back to basics, those would be excellent, excellent cards here. And I could even envision Andrew flipping the search for his Kanta for a one shot at let me find that card that just ends the game now. But he probably has enough card filtering in his hand that he doesn't really need to spend his mana that way.
See if he's got a fetch land here. He does. Yeah, I think that he's... So he runs 3 planes, but maybe there's one already in the yard, or maybe he's just protecting it.
Maybe he boarded it out. That's probably the least likely of the options.
Well, we have some options at least. And I think we're going to see Snapcaster Mage for another cantrip. No, he's just going to start with Ponder. He's already got that in his hand. He actually had to pay 2 mana because of Sphere of Resistance there. That's back to basics on the bottom there, Reed.
I wonder if that's good enough to draw a concession. I mean, even if Lucian has Krosan Grip in hand, he's... okay, I guess he'll untap a Forest and a Mox Diamond, so it might be good enough if he has the Grip already, but if he doesn't,
There it is.
Not a lot of breathing room here.
Right. That's back to basics. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lands, 6 lands that are going to stay tapped. Yeah, you get to untap your Mox Diamond. Land go. So Andrew's got to be thrilled with this. His back to basics is still on the battlefield.
Yeah, I think he should play this turn to maximize his position if the back to basics gets Croson gripped. And if it doesn't get gripped, he basically is just going to win anyway. So
right.
Let me plan for the worst, plan that my opponent's going to get to unlock all of their lands.
It looks like in his hand as well, he has a surgical extraction. He could actually take, like, if he's surgical to grips, is that it?
Well, Lucian could respond.
If he has the last one in his hand.
Yes.
Fair enough. So that would be a disaster. He also, of course, can surgical other combo pieces or whatever else. Lucian wants to cast Life from the Loam.
He's going to dredge it because Cuneo Fate Sealed something to the top.
It looks like it was a tireless tracker. Now he's just going to cast it. And he gets reminded by Andrew, we've got a Sphere of Resistance on the battlefield. You have to tap an extra mana. And look at this. Andrew's going to play Spell Pierce. And Lucian can't actually pay. He also tapped one of his Groves there just to try to cast Life from the Loam and, effectively lost it to the back to basics. We need a die upgrade there for Jace the Mind Sculptor because we're going above 6 here, kids. We got a 7 on there now. He's decided to let that card stay on top. He's also chipping in with the Snapcaster Mage, which is at least something of a clock. So should Lucian just stop using Dredge and just hope to draw the Croson Grip?
Well, he has to, but he's getting Fate Sealed is the problem.
So he just knows that he can't get that either. Wow. Andrew Cuneo. Bajuka Bog. And here's Snapcaster Mage from Cuneo to Spell Pierce once again. And I think that, Lucian's going to pack it in here. That was a pretty cold lock there from Andrew Cuneo.
That was a sweet game.
That one really was.
That one was up in the air for a lot of turns. Both players were sort of doing their thing. Andrew with the Jace, Lucian with the Life from the Loam. But in the end, it's Cuneo and his back to basics that come out on top.
It's interesting because Jace was obviously so critical of that game, drawing him multiple cards, giving him the ability to see so many different cards from his library. But the cards that actually put it away were those big finishers like back to basics. And we mentioned it near the end there. He did draw a surgical extraction and ended up needing to cast it. But, those silver bullet type cards that are so good against what Lucian's doing. But Jace is what got him there.
Yep.
He wasn't getting there one at a time.
It's definitely a case of step 1, assemble your mana, assemble your card draw engines, and then step 2 is find the cards that put the game away. But, Andrew's not rushing to anything. His deck is very slow and methodical, as is his reputation as a player. Of course, Control Master Andrew Cuneo, but he's just going to be content to play a long game as long as Lucian's not doing anything to force the action. So here we go, final game of the Grand Prix. A classic matchup, one that can go either way. Two players that have proven themselves very skilled over the course of a pretty tough field. All weekend,
definitely.
The top of the standings was filled with really, really strong players, and I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah, when we were following you through your journey, I remember thinking that too, even back on day one. You played Who was it that you played first? Was it?
So it started with Christopher,
Yeah.
who was just coming off a Grand Prix top 8
And he
2
played
weeks ago.
really well.
He played really well, and that was the warm-up.
Yeah,
That
then it was
the-
Yuya.
Then it was Yuya Watanabe,
Then
Tomohiro
Saito.
Saito, Andrew Beckstrom.
Yep.
And then Brad Bonin, who
Yes.
wound up being our top seed. He beat
That's
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no easy matchups for me on day one.
I remember thinking that. Yes, I remember just thinking like, wow, this is a stacked field. And it indeed was. Some legacy specialists making it into the top 8 as well. It was nice to see that.
Yep, Noah
Legacy.
Walker and Joe Lissette in particular.
That's right. Yeah, they played against each other in the quarters. Noah won that one, but then lost to Lucien here. They had a sweet game. You know what Lucien got him with?
What was it?
Drop of honey.
Wow.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Kill the smallest creature. In this case, it was a 5/5. And then it killed another one. But the truth is that Noah actually navigated it beautifully, digging and digging and digging until he could actually put out enough lethal threats that even through Drop of Honey, he was going to win the game. But Lucien actually had a combo piece in his hand for a while and found the other and ended up putting a 20/20 on the battlefield, and that was all she wrote.
Yeah, the fact that the lands combo can be assembled just by playing lands, it's not vulnerable to permission spells. It does cut the number of cards that can interact with you that you have to worry about.
Mm-hmm. Okay, looks like we're all set for game number 3. Our players keeping? Yeah, looks like it. Lucien's going to kick things off with Wasteland, Mox Diamond. Uh-oh, is this another one of those starts for Lucien? Riftstone Portal in the graveyard. Sphere of Resistance here on turn 1, Reed.
Holy cow, that's a threatening start, particularly because of the Wasteland. I mean, we know Andrew's deck is chock full of basic lands, so that's not necessarily going to be an issue based on his draw, but wow, a lot of decks would have a very hard time beating that start.
Mm-hmm. Pair of Wastelands now. 3 mana available for Lucien. And he's going to cast a Life from the Loam just to get back the Riftstone Portal. Sure. But that's all it does right now, which is kind of nothing. But as we saw before, Life from the Loam on its own is a card draw engine for a deck like what Lucien's put together here, the Lands deck. Oh. He's got to decide if he wants to dredge or draw a card here.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like he's pausing now to think about it. No, he actually wants a card. It's rare to see the Life from the Loam style decks not just use Life from the Loam basically every time they can. Oh, and you can see why. He's got a Tireless Tracker, and he wanted to spend his mana on that this turn.
Yes, Cuneo really wants to have a Swords to Plowshares or at least a Brainstorm, something to spend his mana on here.
Mm-hmm. Is Cuneo interested in getting rid of the Sphere of Resistance, or can he not dedicate resources to it?
It's very dependent on his hand,
Okay.
but I would say since he's not under pressure, he would probably be okay with having it stick in there and just make his land drops and not worry.
Okay. By the way, you mentioned Counterbalance on our intro show, and he's going to land one right here, Reed.
Yeah, that's one of the good answers to Life from the Loam.
So how does that part work?
Well, it used to be a lot easier with Sensei's Divining Top. You could just permanently float a 2 on top of your library, but
Right.
basically, Life from the Loam is a card that's going to be cast every single turn for marginal value, and if you can cut the number of turns that it's resolving by half or even a third, that's a big deal. That really does take a lot away from the engine. So
This is a big reveal here.
yeah, a blind flip.
He hit 3 lands with it. Oh, and it was Swords to Plowshare, so it's going to resolve. A pair of Thespian Stage and a Rishadan Port there for Lucien.
The port is huge here in combination with the Sphere of Resistance.
And you see that's the one that he decided to play.
I can see even that Cuneo has Back to Basics in his hand, but the problem is he needs 4 mana to cast it, and he might not get there with the Rishadan Port.
Is there a world where we see Lucian use Thespian Stage to copy Richard and Port?
Absolutely. In fact, that's a really great heads-up play.
Huh. You kind of feel the boa constrictor working its way around Andrew Cuneo's mana base here. He at least needs to keep hitting land drops. He runs out a second copy of Counterbalance.
So it's not
Doesn't do much.
super effective, but it does insulate himself against Croson Grip, and you can do some tricks where you blind reveal the first Counterbalance trigger, and then you shuffle your library, or you do a brainstorm, stuff like that. So it's not useless, but not the most effective.
Mox Diamond goes on the stack. Andrew says, hey, I can probably counter that, but no, it was actually a Snapcaster Mage, so it's going to resolve, and that Riftstone Portal is going to end up back in the graveyard. There's Thespian Stage.
And we might see your play, Marshall. Copy the Port, make sure Cuneo never gets to the back to basics Jace range. Well, he can do it end of turn because remember the stage would get tapped, so he can't successfully port.
Right, he wouldn't have an extra mana to actually port. My bad.
And I wonder if this is drop the hammer time back to basics.
Well, there's no time like the present, as they say. Boom, there it is. Back to basics on the battlefield. Now, currently, it's locking down a port and a wasteland.
Oh, and there's no Croson Grip. At least not yet.
Wow. This is huge haymakers from both players. Lucian developing a huge mana base and hiding kind of behind that Sphere of Resistance, but now Cuneo has successfully landed back to basics. And that is a must deal with if you're sitting in Lucian's seat.
Yeah, is back to basics going to be the card of this match, the card of this tournament?
Boy, if it sticks on the battlefield, it certainly could be. Lucian passes a turn back. Andrew Cuneo continuing to hit his land drops. That's a sort of a undersold story in the games like this, where your opponent is using things like Rashad and Port and the Sphere of Resistance. You know, you really need to make sure that you keep hitting land after land after land. The minute you start to stumble, it really gets a lot worse for you, and Andrew's hit all of his land drops thus far.
So, interesting. This might be a question of if Thespian Stage can become a basic land.
Right. It looked like he pointed over at an island there.
Yeah, I'm sure he was asking that, which I believe the answer is it cannot become basic. It can become an island, but it can't change its super type.
Okay.
But we would need a judge to answer that for sure.
Now is your last chance to register for that event. Additionally, we need just 2 more players to launch our...
By the way, Back to Basics was one of the all-time great flavor texts. Ruler wears a crown while the rest of us wear hats, but which would you rather have when it's raining?
Are you serious? Oh, that is good. I like that. Man, sick color commentary too, Reed. Well done.
That's the type of stuff that I study when I'm getting ready for a coverage gig.
Oh, man.
Oh, we're actually correcting my previous statement that Thespian Stage can copy the basic super type of a land. That's pretty interesting. So it would be a basic island with the Thespian Stage ability. I never would have guessed.
Surprised by that too. Andrew Cuneo had revealed Jace the Mind Sculptor there, and it looked like he may be considering the option of making that type of play that you mentioned where he would crack that Marsh Flats.
Yeah, splitting the counterbalance triggers, in other words, by changing your top card in between them.
But I think he just wanted to draw Jace the Mind Sculptor here more.
Wow, and look, Lucian has the combo assembled.
He does.
We might just see him take one shot at it and put Cuneo to the test of, do you have Swords to Plowshares?
Yeah, Cuneo's has to be careful, though, because he has to tap 5 mana for Swords to Plowshares.
5 mana for Jace and another 2 for Swords to Plowshares.
Right.
The card that he really would love to have is Snapcaster Mage, since there is a plow Is that right?
Yeah.
Maybe not. Yeah. There's a plow from the tireless tracker. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Whew.
Oh, this is close.
If Andrew doesn't have Swords to Plowshares in his hand right now, then this is a big, big moment.
I think he does, though. I think he actually does have a Swords to Plowshares in his hand. Do you see that white card at the back of his hand?
Yeah.
I think it's Swords. The question for Lucian is, do you just go for it? I mean, if I'm sitting in Lucian's seat and I see Andrew play Jace the Mind Sculptor, crack 2 fetch lands, and say, brainstorm, I might be thinking, this is my shot.
Yeah, and also, is it ever going to get any better
That's
for
what
you?
I mean.
If you do nothing in the face of back to basics, counterbalance, and Jace, when are you going to have another opportunity? So,
well, there's definitely a source of plowshares in that brainstorm. So.
Yeah.
Andrew, considering what he wants to put on back, keeping in mind his counterbalance is?
This is it with the Grand Prix title on the line. Do you make the 2020? No, he doesn't.
He's going to show some patience here. So that Thespian stage by the Mox Diamonds is an island or a plains?
Yeah, it's some kind of basic land.
Okay.
That's why it's untapping.
That's right. And look at that. Andrew had put a Snapcaster Mage on top that gets countered.
That's why Andrew fetched before the Jace Brainstorm, is because he specifically wanted to stack the top of his library and didn't want to mess it up if he had to fetch.
Definitely. And now Lucian just simply passes the turn back to Andrew, and Andrew is right where he wants to be. He's got back to basics on the battlefield, and he has Jace the Mind Sculptor drawing him cards and moving ever closer to this trophy. Andrew has been knocking at the door of a GP trophy for a while now in the last few years. He got one on a team.
Yep, he had an individual limited win as well.
In that's right.
Hour of Devastation Limited, I believe.
Yeah, he's been smashing that. Andrew's really been crushing lately. A couple of GP wins in a year cycle, and now he's one game away from another one. 10,000 bucks.
It's no joke.
It's no joke. Is that a portent there for Andrew?
Oh, portenting the opponent.
Oh, boy.
Just as Richard Garfield intended.
Well, he's not going to have him shuffle. Did he draw his card there? Did I miss it?
Andrew may have missed it. Not too sure.
I feel like he didn't draw his card.
That is a delayed trigger that you're allowed to miss.
Is there any did he know what the top card was and just wanted it to be there? I think it was a 2-drop.
I don't think that would be...
Would that be illegal?
Yeah, I don't think you're supposed to do that.
Okay, so he just forgot then.
Yeah. If he didn't draw, then he just forgot.
Okay. Yeah, we're used to the cantrips, the ones that have been printed in the last 15 years or whatever, get you the card right away. But as you mentioned, portent is what they call a slow trip. It draws it on the next upkeep. All right, Lucian's doing it the good old-fashioned way here. Going to make a 2020 flying. I guess he's decided he's had enough waiting around. But Andrew has the answer in his hand. Swords to Plowshares is going to take care of Merit Lage, and that's a major speed bump out of the way for Andrew Cuneo. Now what's Lucian's game plan?
I don't know. He's got 43 life.
He's
got to answer the Jace, because the Jace ultimate is the real... That's the way that Andrew's actually going to probably try to win this game. Attacking with Snapcaster Mages and little stuff is a really slow way to do it. I think we'll eventually see him start Fate Sealing. So a Disenchant from Andrew, nice as a counterbalance card, nice to have some insulation against Choke.
But as the board sits, Lucian just really doesn't have much going on, and Andrew has it all. Jace the Mind Sculptor, getting cards into hand, making sure that the important ones stay there, setting up his pair of counterbalances, and then he also has Back to Basics, which is really kind of crimping the style of Lucian Longley here.
I think pretty soon we'll see Andrew start Fate Sealing to make sure that a Croson Grip doesn't come off the top and unlock all of Lucian's lands.
Okay.
But we're still in the Portent cycle.
He's doing it again. Portent target you.
It's important to Portent, as Andrew would say.
Oh, he'd say that. Andrew draws this card, and this time he again didn't have Lucian shuffle, so there couldn't have been anything too scary there.
Yeah, and just the simple fact that Andrew knows what's coming is a big advantage, particularly with the counterbalances. He can stack the right card on top to counter the right spell. He can protect himself against Croson Grip, and actually, that's one thing, Marshall, is Croson Grip cannot be countered by Force of Will, but it can be countered by Counterbalance.
Interesting.
Split Second is fast enough that you can't respond to it, but triggered abilities still go on the stack.
It's Punishing Fire now for Lucian.
He looks like he should be spending one more mana for the Punishing Fire due to Sphere of Resistance.
Yeah, I've noticed that he's been... There we go. I think that Andrew's reminded him a few times there, hey, make sure you pay your extra one. That is, after all, your own Sphere of Resistance. You brought that thing to the party. He taps the Mox Diamond to do so, so no big cost to Lucian there.
I wonder if Andrew will start disenchanting those Mox Diamonds. Disenchant, Snapcaster, disenchant.
Gosh, I was thinking that too. It feels hasty, but then Lucian is really starting to get locked out. Andrew's going to cast Spell Snare. And are we going to start seeing Jace tick upwards now?
I think so. Remember, the Punishing Fire is not that big of a problem as long as Back to Basics stays on the battlefield. So with the lands deck having a small number of ways to cantrip, a small number of ways to shuffle a library, Andrew really does have a lot of control over the top of Lucian's library. So, yeah, just the Jace Fate Seal to make sure nothing bad happens seems like the way to start transitioning here. There it is.
And we're going to see Jace Fate Sealing now. I said it earlier today, Reed, when you were down in the feature match area and I was covering your match. The worst feeling in the world when somebody says plus Jace target you can keep it. It's just heartbreaking. So looks like the time and the outs for Lucian are starting to really go away. He's going to play Crop Rotation. Cooney has 2 counterbalances. And he's going to play a Brainstorm. He has another Brainstorm in his hand, so he can certainly put one of those back on top of his library. And now we see Counterbalance really starting to shine. Not that many spells from Lucian, but how many of them are actually going to resolve anyway? Okay, that was on Cunio's end step. Lucian draws his card for the turn. And just passes the turn back to Andrew Cunio. Will Andrews' dominance of the GP scene continue? It's certainly starting to look that way.
Yeah, look at his hand, Marshall.
Boy.
Counterspell, force of will, everything.
Getting a little jealous looking at all those blue cards in hand. Boy.
Andrews made his career off of navigating into situations like this.
Mm-hmm. If you're just tuning in, we're in the finals here. Andrew Cuneo and Lucien Langlais tied at a game apiece, but Andrew has had Jason Mind Sculptor on the battlefield for a lot of turns, and it looks like the tide of card advantage is so far in his favor.
And there's 2 Croson grips down from the dredge.
Boy. Also, if you're just joining us, the Thespian stage that's in between the 2 Mox Diamonds is actually copying a basic land. That's why it's untapping even under back to basics. Wow, milled 2 Croson grips, Reed. Andrew Cuneo has to be thrilled to see that. There are only 3.
Mm-hmm. And I can tell you if that back to basics does not leave the battlefield, Andrew's not going to lose. All he has to do is just not make any gross missteps and not leave himself open to a instant speed merit Lage.
He received Brainstorm in response to a Punishing Fire. Let's see if he has a 2-drop. Yep, with that Disenchant that he's had in his hand for a while. He hasn't decided to use it on the Mox Diamonds. Instead, decided to keep it in hand as a 2-drop and maybe, considering a card like Choke. But Jace is very close to going ultimate. Next turn, he'll have it in range, and then he can ultimate the turn after that. And if that happens, we're done here.
Yeah, the only way that Lucien could have found a direct path to victory is if he ever had 2 Croson grips stacked on top of one another so that the Jace Fate Seal would bottom something and then you'd get a fresh draw and actually hit. But with only 1 remaining in his library, that can't happen. So he needs to, stack a Cycler in his hand so he can somehow get a fresh draw step and then get lucky.
Yeah, this one's all but locked up for Andrew Cuneo. His Jace, you've exceeded the die, Andrew. This one doesn't go to 13. You're going to have to grab another. And if he puts that back on top of the library, I think we're just about done here. We're going to have a champion. Andrew Cuneo. Once again. Showing his prowess, by the way. Team limited legacy? That is quite a range.
So, okay, a little bit of a confusion here. Andrew went to clean up, and once a player discards due to hand size, there's no opportunity to take an action. So
that's right.
Lucien would have had to stop him before he discarded.
Right. And Andrew would have said, I'd like to go to discard, and then Lucien could then do end step things. But if he said okay.
Oh my God, Marshall, I think
what?
he found Croson Grip, but it's 1 turn too late.
He did. So his only chance to even survive here is to try to get a Punishing Fire. Can he even do that at this point? No, he's just going to pass the turn back.
So I wonder, what happens after the Jace goes ultimate? Your hand becomes your library.
Yep.
Does your graveyard stick around? Maybe he can use the Punishing Fires. But
I don't think it does.
Generally in Magic, getting your library exiled is a big problem.
Understatement from Reed Duke. Yeah, exile all cards from target player's library. Then that player shuffles his or her hand into his or her library.
Okay, so look what he's going to do. He's going to prioritize Punishing Firing Jace first, thinking, okay, if I can get 1 turn window, then I can Croson Grip the back to basics, unlock my lands, then go to work with the Punishing Fires. Andrew has none of it.
And that's going to do it. Lucien Langlais extends the hand, and Andrew Cuneo is your champion. Congratulations, Andrew. You are a legacy champion here at GP Richmond. Fantastic work and super fun to watch him do his thing in the feature match area. Reed, you and I had a break during the semifinals, and of course, being the Magic junkies that we are, we both found ourselves in the feature match area, standing there watching live, and we got to watch quite a bit of Andrew Cuneo beat Brad Bonin there in his semifinal match. It was really fun to watch him do his thing.
Oh, it was just great. I mean, Andrew's been doing this for years. He's probably playing with the same counterspells and portents that he was playing with in 1996, and
he definitely
still knows how to use them.
So congratulations to him, and of course Lucien Longley, great work by him as well, kind of coming out of nowhere with that lands deck and running the field, and boy, he is going to be happy to be silver. We mentioned it earlier, but he locks up silver with his finals finish here. And here's an Andrew Cuneo. Let's get a headset on this guy.
Some silver hardware.
Andrew, welcome to the booth. Have a seat. Nice trophy. Congratulations. You
Thank
are
you.
our champion here in Richmond. How long have you been using those counter spells to win Magic trophies?
Well, I had one counterspell on my deck. It's from the original Drago deck. It is very beat up.
He made the draw go deck that originated the whole idea of huge amounts of counter spells and a little bit of card draw in there and stop you from doing everything. And in many ways, this Miracles deck is some form of an evolution of that. You know, one of the original control decks. How much do you like this deck? Just got you a trophy.
Yeah, I like it a fair amount. I played the exact same list at Pro Tour 25 and didn't do that well at Pro Tour 25, but ran it back anyway. It's really good for me. I mean, I had a lot of moments this tournament where Back to Basics was really, really strong.
Mm-hmm.
That last game, it was kind of not even. It wasn't that good, that game.
I liked it.
Well,
I mean, he couldn't cast, he couldn't tap his lands.
Well, no, I mean, he could have gotten a second stage onto a basic land too.
Mm-hmm.
It was the counterbalances that won that game.
Okay.
Like the game before Back to Basics just won single-handedly.
Yeah.
But
That was fantastic.
he got so unlucky with how many Crossing Grips he dredged.
We saw that two of them in the second game, and then
Oh,
two
yeah.
of them in that last game at once.
Yeah.
Basically locked him out, right? Since you had Jace on the Fate Seal plan.
Well,
I mean, you had his
Yeah.
list. He only had one more.
yeah, he had one more, and that was the card I was trying to Fate Seal away from him.
Right.
So
That's what I'm saying. If two of
Yeah.
them are in the yard, it's going to be tough for him to
yeah,
find.
I don't think there was anything else I would have Fate Sealed at the bottom.
Also, Andrew showing that he's not just a control player, aggressively portenting your opponent with there down the stretch.
I mean, I don't know that there were any of them on camera where I got people with predict, but I predicted my opponents a lot. It's a really good effect.
That's great. You really showed your range here, man. Taking down trophies in limited, team limited, and now legacy as well. That's that's about as far as you can get. We don't really hold vintage tournaments here. We've got the newest sets with the newest cards and the smallest card pools all the way up to the biggest one that we play at this level. Nice job, man.
Thank you.
You have any questions for your teammate here?
I think his play spoke for itself. I mean,
It really did.
I don't have anything to add.
To me, it feels like all is right with the world. Andrew Cuneo's winning tournaments with a control deck. I'm happy for it, and I'm happy for you, Andrew. Congratulations. All right, remember, we're not done. This is a 3-day GP event here, and we're going to be back at 9 a.m. tomorrow. We're going to leave Legacy in the rearview mirror and transition into day 2 of the standard tournament, where we're going to be doing the same thing, where we run it all the way up to the top 8 and hand out a trophy. Again, 9 a.m. local time. That's Eastern time. We'll see you in the morning.